Welcome to the Double D Do Business podcast by RLC with your hosts, Dave Evans and Debbie Halls-Evans, where they meet each week with guests and discover ways you can help yourself and others become best version businesses, teams, and people.
Welcome back. It's Double D time, Debbie. We've got another brilliant guest with us today. I'm already getting that look. What's up?
No, because you always do this. He always does this introduction and just looks at me and goes, "So, Debbie, who we got today?" And I'll go, "Well, why don't we have
I can tell you, actually. I can tell you. So there aren't many people who I hear tell a story at an event who leave me mesmerized. And I remember I came up to David at the 4Gen Now event in Denver, and I came up to him saying I was really touched by what you had to say. And I think at first you didn't quite believe me, but because it seemed like, yeah, right, sure. And you even defended yourself about it. But I was genuinely touched about your passion for one of the things we're going to talk about today. So we have with us David Morrison. David, tell us a little bit, and our listeners, who you are, what you do.
Well, certainly, I'll do that in a moment, Dave. But the first reason I was a little suspicious when you approached me was you were the only man in the room wearing a dress. So,
skirt. I call it a skirt.
Yeah, I know it's a kilt, but anyway, it was the sight of your knees that.
That's right. I don't think I'll ever forget, David, Jim Sugarman's face that day when he heckled me, and then somehow or other I was allowed back on the stage to completely heckle him back.
That was a wonderful event, dealing with the benefits of having multiple generations in the workplace. And so my workplace, I'm a financial advisor, and I've helped successful families who are busy with the things they love to do, never worry about their money again. And I've done that for more than 30 years, first with big banks and big investment companies, now with my own firm here in Colorado.
That's a great statement, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because I think it leads us into one of the things we wanted to talk about today was how do you collaborate without fear in a world that's demanding us all to do that? And I like the fact that your collaboration is delivering, a worry-free investment or a worry-free financial goal attainment. I don't mean worry-free investment, and that's the wrong phrase, but I think you know what I meant. Taking the angst out of it. I love that. It's a great ethos.
Well, we are in a strange world right now,
Yeah.
where people are so aware of the lack of control that they felt they had, and maybe we never did, but we thought we did, and we were comforted by that illusion. But what I love to do, guys, is help build value, and help build value in the families and businesses that I get to work with. And what I've learned is that to build value in my business, to build value with the other professionals I work with, we have to work well together. We have to work effectively together, and that's the collaboration topic. It is really these days a non-negotiable. Life today and business today, they're so complicated. And when I work with other professionals, CPAs, attorneys, insurance professionals, investment professionals, real estate professionals, doing taxes, budgeting, spending planning, investing, insurance, estate planning, real estate transactions, etc. There's no one person who can know all the nuance of all those subject areas. Mm. And as we become subject matter experts, we have to learn to work well together.
Yeah. We watched some of our CPA clients over the last 2 years. First of all, last season, they went into a tax season and the rule book changed, and they said it was the toughest ever. And then this year has happened, which changed all the rules. And yet, you are right. The complexities of those tax changes affect every industry, don't they? And massively hinder or help even the work that you do. Before we get into the collaboration part, the second thing that struck me about David, Debbie, was the size of the heart of this guy. And you've seen it, as in when we came to visit you in your offices and did a little mini session.
Some of the best ribs I've ever had, by the way.
Absolutely.
I'll let you know.
I'm originally a Texan, so I have a fond spot in my heart. If you want to talk about heartfelt issues, ribs, but a good barbecue is quite important to me.
Well, you delivered that day.
Yeah, you did. It was,
and if we weren't in the middle of doing an event straight after, we'd have grazed there for several hours on the food you provided, because it was absolutely sensational, wasn't it? So, but I think you feel that. And why do I mention it? When we've been through the 2020 challenges, some of the early broadcasters of videos, yours was one of my favorites, because it said, "Are you okay?" And then you said, "Are you going to be okay?" And it was the style you did it. We talked about it last week together. And I think that if anyone's listening to this from across the world, or particularly in the US, who needs advice in this area in their life and needs wealth and financial health assistance, then you've got to speak to Dave's company, because you've really demonstrated your heart real time during the last couple of months. So, and we've been watching it. So good work.
Thank you. Well, the thing I've learned lots of things through this whole ordeal that the whole world is going through together. But something I've learned, for many years, more than 30 years, I have worked to cultivate, professional knowledge, but also a professional image. And we have a beautiful offices on a 11th floor of a nice building with great views of the Colorado mountains and all that, very professional environment. We work hard with our professional development. We want to appear to be ready to able to accept challenges and help our clients. And in working so hard for professionalism, it's easy to lose the fact that we're all human.
Yes.
And we're all going through this together with the same fears, same doubts, same, where we're going to get hope, issues like that. And it's been a time where, as I connect with clients, with friends, with new people who I get to meet in life, we've gone to a different depth of, so are you okay? Are you really okay?
Yeah.
And I've had those conversations in parking lots and elevators and the most unexpected places in the last few months, because I think this is a time where we need to be very human and real with each other, that this is some crazy stuff. So.
And I think for me, that's where the kind of the theme of our chat is about collaboration without fear is. We forget the human element when we collaborate. We do. And that's what people get scared of. They get scared that somebody might be better than them. They get scared that they might not know everything. They get scared. We build these mini stories in our heads, and it stops us from moving forward and working with people. Some are natural synergies, that you talk about, tax and an accountant. They're natural, but it doesn't mean that I know everything or I'm the expert, or, there are so many tax laws. But if I go into completely different extremes where, if I will look at some of the well-being that's happening across the world now, and actually that has so many links to so many elements of business and life. Yeah. But we have to collaborate, and we have to sometimes surrender and give in our information, or, we valued something that we've created, but sometimes we've got to just let it go and actually share openly without fear.
Yeah,
absolutely. And certainly there are issues about collaboration, and I think so much in life, and certainly collaboration, comes down to two important factors: trust and communication.
Yep.
And to build a trusting relationship takes a while.
Yeah.
There's an investment guy here Charlie Munger, who's Warren Buffett's partner, and he has a quote about weaving a fabric of earned trust. And over time, you only do that over time. And that trust is vital. That plus communication that works. And, the being able to communicate well is actually something I see so many brilliant professionals struggle with.
Yeah.
And the lawyers I work with, the CPAs I work with, will lapse into jargon of their profession, and while they may feel they're being helpful and they feel they're being professional, it goes right over many of their clients' heads. And so I've often sat in meetings with folks as a translator of sorts, and in an unusual transaction or a complicated tax issue or something, or an estate planning discussion where legal documents are being drafted. And I have enough familiarity with some of those things that I can help speak legalese and translate to the client and say, well, what he means is this.
Yeah, and I think that for me is, I think one of the things that you can experience in any industry is that we can hide behind jargon. It makes us feel that we're the expert, and again, it actually stops people from collaborating, because that is where the fear comes in. I'm talking to you in my jargon because I don't want to tell you everything, so you're not going to know everything, so it kind of gives me a bit of an upper hand. The other person receiving it then feels that there's a block, and like you said, the communication doesn't work, or somebody will do something because you've not built the relationship on trust first, and then somebody will do something, they'll do it with a positive intent, because we genuinely believe that that's what most people do. 99.9% of people will do things with a positive intent, but how it's received is completely differently because they've not communicated properly.
Yeah. And it's a real challenge. And I like the fact that you said that in your experience, it's about trust, earn trust over time. And I think that takes us to where some of the biggest fear exists. So you're mentioning lawyers, CPAs as an example, or professionals as a generalization. They work so hard to win a client, and then they have to liaise with you. And I guess that comes with a tin full of head trash. Hey, what if he's going to take my client? How do you navigate that? Because that's tricky for anybody, isn't it?
Well, there's risk, and I refer my clients to everybody from real estate brokers to car brokers to CPAs and insurance people. And if they do a bad job, that's a poor reflection on me. So what I've learned to do is to how do you find allied professionals like that? First, I go to somebody I trust to introduce me to someone else who they trust, and work to start there. I know Dave, and Dave feels like you have these skills that we need, and I trust Dave, and Dave trusts you. So it's a bit of borrowed trust initially. Then the trust building for me, I've found in new relationships, I'm fairly quick to trust people, honestly. And sometimes I've been burned by that, but more often the result has been good. And I really feel like approaching the world with a mentality of being more trusting than I am suspicious works better. And yes, occasionally I will be disappointed. But those occasions is a percentage of the times where it works well, or few, or quite few. But what I've learned is in developing trust with someone, often learning, it's not about what I say, it's really more about listening to their story.
Yeah.
Somehow builds trust. I have a mentor and a coach who talks about, we all sort of have a trust dial in our head. and and the meter goes up when people ask about you, and the meter goes down when all they do is blah 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 about me. And so enough about me, but let me tell you this about me. And you know, it's a funny thing about human nature, but I think it's really true. As I have the opportunity to hear someone's story, they trust me more, and that's a reasonable thing, not a manipulative thing.
No, absolutely, because you are prioritizing hearing them, and I love that idea, Debbie, of the trust dial going up when you're by listening, because it connects to so many shared things that we all subscribe to. And again, if you're listening to this today, to the listener, you might notice there's a few tiny little silent pauses, because David, some of your points are they're worth stopping and just going, aha, because you instantly put yourself, don't you, in the position, do I do enough? Am I thinking about those things enough? Do I demonstrate those things enough? How could I apply your trust example of borrowing trust from somebody that you know to need to know someone? That's a practical thing you can do and apply and think and put into action. So I love that. So let's talk about one of your passions, another reason why we bumped into each other. And that is some of the amazing work you do in a country in Middle East and North Africa, the region. Tell us a bit about where that is, Dave, and why did you start doing that? I mean, were you not busy enough already?
Well, yeah, you're talking about the work we've been involved in for a decade or so in Uganda.
Correct. And doesn't he say that brilliant? Yeah, we go Uganda, you go Uganda. You say it so much better.
When I'm there, because of their colonial history, it's probably Uganda, but I'm originally from Texas, so we say all sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, like so many things in life, we figured did it because of our kids. I had our older daughter, who's nearly 30 now. When she was a teenager, got interested in what was going on around the world, particularly with poverty and alleviation of hunger and extreme poverty. And so she had a chance when some friends of our family literally started an orphanage in Uganda.
Wow.
Two young women, they were in college, they were just over for a summer project, and they went to this orphanage and worked for just a few weeks, and it was dismal. It was terrible. The children were not fed, they were living on dirt floors in one big room. There was really no sanitation, and many of the children were being abused in various ways, and it was awful. So they called home and said, "Hey, Mom," and their mom was a dear friend of ours, said, "Hey, Mom, we're not coming home. We're going to start an orphanage in Uganda." And when I first heard that, I chuckled just like that. But a few months later, these remarkable young women had gotten government permitting, they'd received funding, they'd found a place, they'd hired local staff, and they brought over 80 of these orphans in desperate straits. Today, that's 11 years ago now. Today, we have 4 schools on 3 different campuses, more than 4,000 students before the shutdown. We have a hospital that's actually become a relief center. And we have programs in villages that train women who in skills that they don't get. So it's remarkable, and I've been able to help lead that organization. We have a big fundraiser coming up here at the next month, and so I talked about that in that Forgin talk, because what I've really come to learn and what I've come to believe passionately is that, you know, there are all things in our lives that we give our hearts to.
Yeah. And
if the values about those things are not aligned with your decisions about life, about work, about your money, if those are not aligned with those values about the things you really care about, your life's out of whack, and you won't experience the happiness, you won't experience the success that you could with that sort of alignment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's pretty powerful stuff, because I actually think a lot of people, and weirdly have just had this conversation with a new coaching client, is people don't know their own personal values.
They don't know.
They don't know them. We don't teach or converse in it. You know, we don't educate our children enough in it. And I think that's, you know, particularly if you think about where we're at now, one of our existing clients said the most powerful thing the other day, and we're on a consult call, and he just said, do you know what COVID's taught me? He said, how little I need to be happy. And it was an incredible statement, because this is somebody who has been very materialistic all their life. And this horrendous thing that is affecting us globally has actually had so many powerful impacts on us as individuals. And, you know, for many of us, I'm not saying everybody, but there's a realization that, you know, we can give more, we can do more, we can, and actually live with less, because how we actually all live is so consumptive. And resetting those values, and actually not just resetting, knowing what they are and learning what they are, and then living them. Because I agree with you. I think if you know your values, your decisions are made with a good, solid, thought through process. Even if it's a fast thought, it's still built on really strong values.
And it also helps you immediately recognize your gut and your instinct more. So when you get in that jar in your spirit or in your physical gesturing, a pain in the neck, that's because people can experience a jarring of your gut by a physical pain, is to learn to pay attention, learn, as you said a few moments ago, learn to listen. In this case, listening to yourself. And I think that's a massive, massive lesson.
David, a quick question. You know, you said you trust quickly, so you give trust first. And I actually believe that's what we should all do. Do you believe that's because you are and you understand your own personal values well and you live by them? Is that an easier thing to give trust because of that foundation?
That's a great question, Debbie. That's certainly a part of it. Part of it's my experience. Hard won, honestly. Many times you get a few miles on you, a few years on you, and you learn lessons different ways. But I think that it's about the values. It's about the experiences in life, and I think it's about your hopes. You know, gosh, I encounter different people in my day, and you look at somebody and you have no idea who they are, but just from their countenance, from the way they carry themselves, maybe the few things they say, you make a judgment, and we all do this. You make a judgment like, I think that's a really good person. I don't really know them. I don't know anything about them, but gosh, Debbie just seems, so upbeat, so positive, so much like somebody I'd really like to get to know better. And it's experiences like that, I think, that make me more quick to trust. And I guess too, I want people to look at me that way. I'm in an industry in financial services that is down there on the trust meter, with politicians and who tax gatherers or whoever. And so, gosh, I don't want to be that guy, And I think as I am trusting, people can probably in turn work to trust me. But of course, your behavior has to follow through.
Yes.
That absolutely is the biggest thing, isn't it? That's what we always talk about. Does the behavior match the word spoken? And when it does, it's a bit like what you said earlier. When you get the trust call right, and you do borrow that trust or invest that trust, and you see it being reflected or honored, depending on words you choose to say, when behavior is delivered, it's a joyful moment to realize that, you know, sometimes it might just be, as I look at my wife here, a relief. Thank goodness. Sometimes it is only that. But you know, we've all been there, and I like the way you put it. Some of those moments are one, two, through the experiences that you have had. So I want us to circle back to your profession, not to zone in on particularly the industry or the specialism, but I guess, David, as we drift towards, and time has flown by, the end of this episode, what's one of the number one things you want anyone listening who may need your services to remember from today's conversation?
Thank you for asking that. I guess, so you asked me as we were preparing for this to think about some of the business wisdom or general wisdom, things that have impacted me. You know, the legendary Zig Ziglar always used to talk about how if I want to get what I want, I have to help enough people get what they want.
Yeah.
And honestly, it brings me great joy to help people get what they want, to help families achieve their goals, because honestly, so many of them come back to money. You know, you want to spend time with your family. You want to have a family gathering place. You want to, well, we remodeled our home last year, and we have my wife and I at home now, plus some poodles. And at the time we remodeled a home that was way too big for us. Well, guess what? Now we have 2 children back living with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's fabulous. It's wonderful. And it's temporary. I keep telling you that. It's temporary. But you know, your financial decisions and your back to that value question need to be in alignment. And that's what I love to do. I love to help people put those sorts of things together to build value for them.
And I always think, and this is only since Dave, over the past kind of 5 or 6 years, been working with a lot of financial areas, is money is joyful. And I think we have such a negative take on money, because what another client had said, you know, money doesn't bring happiness. It brings the option of choices. And I think if we can get better at just knowing that money isn't this negative thing, it doesn't make me any better than you, doesn't give me any additional kudos in life. If we are judging money like that, then we're not valuing money for what it really is worth.
Mark Cuban said this week, he was quoted as saying, if you're miserable without money, you're going to be miserable when you get some.
Mm-hmm. That's brilliant. Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah. We do an exercise as we begin a relationship with 2 clients around a tool called the financial roadmap. And we start with the question, what's important about money to you? And then I'll often get an answer like security or choices. Well, what's important about having security or choices? Well, that allows me to do this. Well, what's important about that? And it's an exercise where people really can discover what their values are, what's really important to them. And then a fun thing to do is do it with a couple. Yeah. I make him be quiet while she's doing it, and vice versa. And they'll look at each other and go, that's why you do that thing you do, or that's why you believe that. Oh,
right. Yeah.
But anyway, it's all about what's important to you.
Yeah, I'm not a couples counsellor, but I can imagine that people avoid having those discussions about it because we're brought up in society that doesn't have this open dialogue about it. And I think it's a very positive thing if it's used, like you said, linked, aligned, and actually has an impact of value for everybody, because money benefits and should benefit everybody, not just ourselves, others.
And that shared alignment, then, I think, because we've talked about in some simple principles around the energy you put out into the world around you is what you shouldn't be surprised is reflected back. Mm-hmm. But if you work as a couple together in that energy, and you see it through even when you've got doubts, but you do have hope, a key word from earlier, then that shared together is more powerful. So I can see the super value of that financial roadmap, helping people become clear about lots of different things. Because there's nothing worse. So, if I give you a cliche quick thing, I remember years ago serving people in retail stores, and you'd be teaching people to say hi to the public, and you'd say, go and have a conversation. But you'd ask maybe the husband or the wife, and you'd say, is there anything in particular you're looking for? And one of them goes, no. And the other one goes, well, yes. So now you're greeting two people who are strangers, who are now in the middle of a perceptual tiff over, do I want to talk to the assistant? And you think about how simple that is. Yet in business, in coaching relationships with couples, and now today we've heard about in financial planning, actually that alignment is critical everywhere.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, I do need to say that if there are any nuggets of wisdom, if there are any tidbits here that have been helpful to you guys or your listeners, it's because I've been coached. I've spent a whole lot of time and a whole lot of money over the last decade being coached by some world-class people. And business coaches, life coaches, fitness coaches, nutrition coaches, spiritual coaches, etc. And I'm so grateful for people like you two who invest yourselves in the lives of others in that way. I've told somebody I'm a slow learner with cash flow. So the ideal client for a coach.
Perfect. And I love that endorsement, because we are from Britain. It is still it's not taboo in Britain, but there's still you wouldn't see necessarily huge successful people going, I've got a coach yet. It is growing. Yeah. And actually, I've got to tell you, sometimes as a business owner too, it's a lonely place. So having a conversation is your last resort, the coach. And actually, it's often the most important one, because they're not vested in your outcome, or there's no win in it for them. It's about you achieving your outcome and working it through with you. No, I appreciate that. That's a really good perspective. So loads to go back over. David, do remember, this is a 2-part commitment. This is part 1. So in the next season, we're going to have you back to see what's changed and what else has been happening in your world, and we'd be delighted to. Yes, Debbie?
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that what we'll do as well on the podcast episode is we'll put the Uganda fund as well. So I'll get those details and make sure we publish those. So if anybody does want to contribute, find out more, do more as well, that would be awesome.
Definitely. That was fabulous to hear about. And looking back at the episode, Debbie, wow, where do you start? Nuggets about trust, nuggets about value sets matched to your financial goals, nuggets about making sure you make a difference. And it's easier to do that when you know what some of these things are. David, this has been it feels like a chunky meal that you can eat slowly when you listen back to this. Thank you for spending time with us on Double D Do Business.
It's been a great pleasure. Thank you.
And every success with your learning.
You've been listening to the Double D Do Business podcast, brought to you by RLC and sponsored by CoachPad, the coaching tool built for you, by coaches, for coaches. If you would like any assistance or help for what you've heard today, please feel free to get in touch with us at info@rlc-global.com. That's info@rlc-global.com. And we would be delighted to hear from you. Wishing you every success with your learning.